both a pleasure and a privilege to join you on this momentous occasion, the second anniversary of the Council for Community Cooperation, an organisation born not of expediency but of principle, not in response to conflict alone, but in an affirmation of our shared humanity. As I stand before you today, I'm reminded of the words of someone I had the great honour of meeting and spending some time with, the playwright, dissident, and former president of Czechoslovakia, of the Czech Republic, Václav Havel. He said, without free, self-respecting, and autonomous citizens, there can be no free and independent nation. The CCC, by its very nature, fosters the autonomy of conscience and the dignity of cooperation, which are the prerequisites for a healthy republic. I'm so pleased to acknowledge the CCC's foundational purpose. Its objectives are not only laudable but essential in today's India, just as Mohammed Ali made clear. And even more so, I would argue, in the India that we hope to shape for tomorrow through the students here. The Council for Community Cooperation was established with a clear and courageous mission to serve as a bridge between communities and a beacon of justice. I must say, when I look at the key objectives of CCC, they reflect this vision with both clarity and courage. To formulate a common platform for people from all communities to interact, communicate, and build mutual trust, to support organizations working in the fields of social security and welfare, recognizing that dignity and safety must be the inheritance of every citizen and not just the privilege of a few, to encourage resolution through discussion and consensus on contentious social issues, for it is only through dialogue that lasting understanding can emerge, to prevent and resolve violence, discrimination, and exploitation that stem from social, religious, or cultural tensions, thereby ensuring that diversity remains our strength and not a fault line, to support individuals and organizations working for the upliftment of women, of children, of marginalized groups, those whose voices are too often silenced or sidelined, to empower people to live respectfully, to live lawfully, and to live with regard for the rights, the feelings, and the beliefs of others, affirming that freedom is not freedom from responsibility. And finally, to ensure that the right of all religious beliefs and organizations to practice their traditions peacefully without fear or prejudice must be respected. Thank you. For liberty is hollow without the assurance of safety. These are not abstract ideas. They are practical, vital, and urgent imperatives. The CCC has enshrined these objectives not merely in policy, but in practice, not merely in aspiration, but in action. I see in this program that we have on the screen peace, harmony, and national development. Peace, if I may say so, is not a passive state. It is an active construction. It is built stone by stone, not only with ideals, but with opportunity. In the long arc of history, the most enduring harmony has always emerged where people are given the tools to shape their own lives with dignity, with security, with purpose. Economic development is not merely a matter of infrastructure, of highways and flyovers and buildings and airports. It is an instrument of empowerment. It uplifts not just our GDP, but it uplifts our human spirit. It dignifies labor, expands choice, and enables the individual to stand upright in the full light of their potential. It is here that I want to pause to honor the contribution of my good friend Dr. P. Muhammad Ali, the founder of Gulfar, and one of the most luminous sons of our state of Kerala. His life's work has not only laid roads across deserts and coastlines, it has opened pathways for thousands of ordinary men and women to lead extraordinary lives. In building one of the region's most respected engineering enterprises, he simultaneously built careers, he nurtured families, and he restored pride to communities. I must say Dr. Muhammad Ali has always seen development as something far greater than construction. It is a form of human liberation. He empowered the marginalized through his charitable work, but not just through charity, through inclusion, not by offering sympathy, but by extending opportunity. I've just come from inaugurating a business school where I told them to heed the lessons of this man has taught us all, that you must place people and not profits at the center of progress. In so doing, Dr. Muhammad Ali reaffirmed the truth that we so often forget, that a just economy is the scaffolding upon which a peaceful society rests. Today, as conflicts scar lands around the world and fracture so many societies, from Ukraine to Gaza, we in India can be proud of the example of Kerala, standing steady, thanks in no small part to those who built silently, tirelessly, with foresight and compassion. Visionaries like Dr. Muhammad Ali sitting here remind us that every bridge we build, every skill we teach, every life we elevate becomes a brick in the edifice of peace. You know, peace is too often misunderstood as simply the absence of war or of overt conflict. Peace is not just a pause in the violence, it is a continuum of justice. Martin Luther King powerfully reminded us true peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. Peace must reside not in our hearts alone, but in our institutions, in our neighborhoods, in our classrooms, and in our kitchens. It is a condition that must be nourished, cultivated, and safeguarded. True peace is possible only when there is equitable access to resources, when prosperity is not the privilege of a few, but the right of all. An inclusive society, one where no group is excluded on account of religion, caste, creed, class, gender, belief, is the only kind of society that can truly enjoy an enduring atmosphere of peace. Indeed, the late Dr. Norman Borlaug, often called the father of the Green Revolution, was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize not for peace, not for ending a war, but for combating hunger. His scientific innovations in agriculture helped ensure food security, averting famine and social unrest for millions. The lesson is clear. Sustainability, justice, and human dignity are essential to the architecture of peace. Bertrand Russell once observed, war does not determine who is right, only who is left. We must remember that peace is not weakness. It is a deeper, nobler strength than war. It is a strength of vision, a strength of compassion, and of restraint. Harmony is not a passive state of mutual indifference, and that's our second word, peace, harmony, and national development. Harmony is an active celebration of our diversity, of our multiplicity. My old boss of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, once said, we may have different religions, different languages, different colored skins, but we all belong to one human race. Harmony is the daily enactment of that empathy. The capacity to see yourself in someone else, to see oneself in the other human being. It requires curiosity, it requires humility, it also requires courage. It requires us not only to tolerate difference, but to cherish it, to accept it, to welcome it, and to draw strength from its presence and meaning. Swamiji knows that Swami Vivekananda famously said that what he had learned most from his own religion is not just tolerance, but acceptance. That acceptance of the other is what gives us harmony. Kerala is not merely a line on a map. It is a poem carved into the western coast of India, where the mountains rise like silent sages and the Arabian Sea whispers the stories of 1,000 arrivals. It is here, in this slender strip of land we live in, that the idea of peaceful coexistence was not only imagined, it was lived, refined, and it's been passed down like a sacred inheritance. And like many lands where histories were written in blood and borders, Kerala's past is etched in conversations between cultures, between creeds, between strangers who became neighbors. The great historian who recently passed away, Dr. N.S. Narayanan, in his study of our past, called Kerala as a civilization of cultural symbiosis. He saw in Kerala not a fortress of fear, but a hearth of acceptance, a place where history evolved through integration, not imposition. Nature too played a part. The Western Ghats stood as our shield, protecting us from the great armies that swept across the plains of India. And the sea was our open gate. It welcomed travelers from Arabia, from China, from Europe, and beyond. But they did not come with swords and shackles. They came with spices, scriptures, songs. They came to greet us, to trade with us, not to kill us. And Kerala embraced them, not as invaders, but as kindred souls in search of a home. From Mattancherry synagogues to Kozhikode's minarets, from the crosses of Kottayam to the temple bells of Thrissur, Kerala became not a melting pot, but a mosaic, where each fragment retains its shape, yet contributes to the whole. But let us be clear, peace is not born of convenience. It is not gifted by rulers, nor imposed by law. Communal harmony is a work of people, and it is a work of centuries. It grows in the shadow of sacrifice. It matures through debate and dissent, through the long labor of social reform. In Kerala, that reform has come like a sunrise from the minds of Sri Narayana Guru, Chaitanya Swamigal, Ayyangali. They did not merely speak of equality, they lived it, they walked with it. They lit lamps in places long shrouded in darkness. Sri Narayana Guru's message still echoes across our hills and valleys. Uru Jadi, Uru Madam, Uru Devam Manisham. What a thunderous call for unity. And yet, how soft it falls upon the heart. He did not ask us to be the same. He asked us to see each other with compassion. Nowhere is this legacy more visible than in the city we are in today, your Kochi, our queen of the Arabian Sea. A city whose spirit is older than her streets, whose soul was shaped by spice winds and sacred verses. Here a church, a mosque, a temple, and a synagogue all rise within calling distance, not as monuments of the past, but as beacons of the present. Kochi did not build walls between her faiths. It built bridges. And even today, her alleys and harbors breathe the music of pluralism. This harmony, dear friends, is not a historical accident. It is the rise of a civilizational choice. One that has been repeated again and again by those who refuse hatred, who chose dialogue over division, and who believed above all in the dignity of difference. The great poet and scholar whom I also had the privilege of knowing, Dr. K. Ayyappa Panikar, once said Kerala is a palimpsest, written and written over time, never erased. Jawaharlal Nehru said the same thing about India. Your palimpsest is if I go right on that wall, and you come and write on top of what I've written, and he comes and writes on top of what you have written, and she comes and writes on top of what we have all written, and no one erases what is behind, what is built up as a palimpsest. That is Kerala. That is India. That is our strength. We have not needed to forget our past to embrace our future. We have let every layer enrich us, every migration, every faith, every tongue. And so as the world grows more fractured, Kerala offers not a perfect model, but a precious reminder that harmony is not weakness, it is strength. It is not silence, it is song. It is not passive tolerance, but active fellowship. So when St. Thomas came in the first century to our shores, he was welcomed on shore by a flute-playing Jewish girl, because the oldest Jewish diaspora in the world outside Palestine came after the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians and came to Kerala. And the Jews have been settled for centuries in peace, the only place in the world where they never knew any anti-Semitic discrimination. Islam came not by the sword, but by travelers, by traders who had already been coming for centuries, and it came as news. They came from the Gulf countries of today, and they said, you know what's happening in our part of the world? There is this Nabi, this prophet, and this is what he's teaching us. So much so, as you know, that Jeremiah Perumal, it is said, was so attracted by this message, he said, I must go off and meet the prophet. And he got into a flotilla of 23 ships and headed off to meet the prophet. Unfortunately, most of the ships didn't make it. Some got stranded in islands very close to the coast of Kerala. He, it is said, made it. And where is the proof? The proof lies in the Kerala coconut trees that still dot the coast of Oman, south of Salalah. Those are not native to the Arabian Peninsula. They were taken by Jeremiah Perumal. This is our history. This is how we all came together, lived together, learned together, and dreamt the same dreams together. In the words of Rabindranath Tagore, the highest education, and I say this to the students here, the highest education is that which does not merely give us information, but makes our life in harmony with all of existence. Kerala has lived that education. We have turned knowledge into wisdom and history into hope. Let us then not merely celebrate this heritage, let us protect it. Let us teach it to our children, not only in textbooks, but also in temples and tea stalls, in classrooms and conversations. Let the world look to us not just for palm-fringed beaches, but for the deeper coastline of humanity that Kerala has drawn and that we all represent. That is what CCC has been all about. And when Muhammad Ali speaks of Kerala, he speaks of India, because India is a symphony of contradictions, of many tongues, faiths and philosophies. Our genius lies not in homogenizing that complexity, but in allowing it to flourish under a common democratic roof. If one were to seek a living, breathing example of this ethos, one need look no farther than the state of Kerala. Today, Kerala stands tall as a shining example of communal harmony, not merely in principle but in practice. Recent events have reaffirmed this collective character. Here, peace, social life, and mutual regard are not parallel tracks that never meet, but they're inextricably woven together into a single beautiful fabric, one that glows with trust, hospitality, and shared belonging. And if Kerala is a tapestry, then Kochi is surely its most vibrant and alluring embroidery. In this city of churches and temples, mosques and synagogues, of port songs and protest poems, harmony is not a utopia but a lived rhythm. And organizations like the Council for Community Cooperation are the weavers, threading fibers of dialogue, tolerance, and coexistence through every stream of our society. Just a short distance from where we sit today stands the Paradesi Synagogue, an enduring symbol of Jewish heritage on Indian soil. We all know that in this city, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and Islam have not merely coexisted, not even merely accepted each other. They have co-created a civic fabric woven with mutual trust and historical openness. In fact, I was struck by the fact that we have such diversity in the state, that when I last made a speech in Kerala, which happened to be in Kozhikode, a lady stood up from the audience and said she is the first elected Gujarati councillor in Kerala. That is acceptance. That is what Kerala is all about. So in our state, harmony is not theory. It is life. It is lived. And this living harmony must become the aspiration of our national life. That is what CCC stands for. When we invest in harmony, we are building more than relationships. We are building social capital, that most vital yet undervalued resource in the development of a just and resilient nation. As Mahatma Gandhi said, our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and test of our civilization. Too often, the third element in our title today is peace, harmony, and national development. National development is only gauged by many in terms of GDP growth, per capita income, global rankings. But I think development is much more than a race for prestige. It is actually much more important. It is a mission of shared dignity. John F. Kennedy once reminded us that the gross national product counts air pollution and cigarette advertising and ambulances to clear our highways of carnage. But it does not count the health of our children, the quality of the education, or the joy of their play. So true. We cannot consider ourselves developed by looking at GDP alone. Yes, we have now become the third largest economy in the world in purchasing power parity terms, the fourth largest in absolute dollar terms. We've overtaken UK and Germany. We're only behind India, the US, China, and Japan. But is that good enough? The truth is, we cannot consider ourselves developed while segments of our population languish in fear or deprivation. We cannot proclaim progress if access to health, education, clean air, safe drinking water remain uneven. And we certainly cannot afford to ignore environmental sustainability, for no growth is meaningful if it mortgages the future of our children. A truly developed nation is one in which a tribal child in Attapadi and a girl in Malappuram, or a coastal fisherman in my own constituency, south of the great new port of Vilnius, if they all enjoy the same rights and opportunities as a banker in Bangalore, a tech executive in Gurugram, or even a bureaucrat in New Delhi. Modern development must be about more than asphalt and algorithms. It's about education, it's about housing, it's about health, it's about safety, especially of women and children, and about human dignity. It's about sustainability, ensuring that growth does not come at the expense of future generations. It's about climate consciousness, ecological balance, and the imperative of renewable energy, of green infrastructure, of environmental stewardship. Modern development also demands digital inclusion, ensuring that the benefits of the information age reach the remotest villages and that technology becomes an equalizing force, not a dividing one. Equally, development today must be equitable. It must actively dismantle the barriers of caste, of gender, of religion, of region, of language, and of class. It must empower women, not just as participants, but as leaders. It must give voice to the voiceless. It must give visibility to the invisible. And perhaps most crucially, development must be participatory, built not on mandates from above, but on consent, on consultation, on community engagement. The great Nobel Prize-winning economist Amartya Sen once observed, development is freedom. Freedom from hunger, freedom from fear, freedom from ignorance, freedom from indignity. And that is where the CCC comes in. This is where I believe that the Council for Community Cooperation can offer us all a path forward, not in grandiose proclamations, but in tireless local engagement, quiet diplomacy, and principled interventions. By facilitating dialogue, resolving intercommunal or interpersonal or any other kind of conflict, and by promoting welfare grounded in constitutional values, the CCC is doing and must do the patient, difficult work that democracy often neglects, but always depends upon. It is so easy to provoke. It is far more difficult to pacify. It is easy to divide. It is far harder to unite. Yet in choosing this more difficult path, the CCC has made itself indispensable. As Eleanor Roosevelt wrote, the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. What a lovely, lovely sentiment. The beauty of your dreams, that's what you must believe in. The CCC has dared to dream. It's dreamt of a more compassionate, more cohesive, more inclusive India. And more important, it has decided to act on that dream. Let me try and wrap this up because I've been told that our students here have a lot of questions they want to ask, and that's why there is a mic sitting there in a chair for me to deal with that. So our final word on history. For we cannot speak of peace or harmony without an honest reckoning with our past. History is not and should not be a cudgel with which to batter others, nor should it be a mirror that flatters only the powerful. History should be the chronicle of all our voices, recorded in song and silence, in glory and in grief. Consider the Kirali excavations on the banks of the Vaigai. What they reveal is not merely artifacts, but a sophisticated, urban, literate civilization. A chapter of Indian history written not in Sanskrit alone, but in Tamil. Not in palaces, but in the streets of ancient towns. This tells us something fundamental. India has always been plural. It has always had many histories, many voices, many truths. And it is in acknowledging this complexity that we find our greatest strength. Here again, Kochi stands as an exemplar, a city where difference has been not just endured, but embraced. Not simply managed, but woven into the texture of our daily life. As Chinua Achebe very wisely said, until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Stories are told by winners. For the longest time, the story of our history was told by the British because they conquered us, they were ruling us. Today we have found our own voice, and that applies to us here as well. Let us commit to a history that is inclusive, truthful, and just. Let us look at this title again, Peace, Harmony, and National Development. Peace, not as a pause in violence, but as a progression of justice. Harmony, not as indifference, but an active compassion and mutual growth. Development, not as exclusive gain or profit or GDP, but as collective upliftment. So as we commemorate this milestone of this second anniversary of CCC, let it also be a moment of renewed resolve to uphold the values that enrich our democracy, that safeguard our diversity, and define our shared destiny. To Mohammad Ali Ji and all those associated with the Council for Community Cooperation, I extend my deepest appreciation and my best wishes. May your work continue to shine brightly in Kochi, across Kerala, and throughout our great nation of India. Thank you very much for listening to me. And Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir.